Nesting a loop means placing a loop inside of another loop. So we can have something like for num in range 3. Inside of this loop, we're going to have another for loop. So I can have for j in range 2. Inside of this for loop, I'm going to have something like print hello. So now we have two loops. We'll have the outer loop and we'll have the inner loop. Here I'm going to have something like print num, or better still, since I'm using j, I can have print I, and instead of the num, I can have I. Now let me run the program. If I run this program, look at what happens. We have the outer loop and we have the inner loop. So first, the outer loop is going to execute once. Then this statement is going to execute. Then we have our inner loop. This loop is going to execute complete before it gets to the turn of the outer loop. So if you look at this output, first, we have range 3, which means we're generating numbers from 0 to 2. That is 0, 1, and 2. So first, we're going to print out I, which at the first loop is equal to 0. So we have this 0. Now the inner loop is going to execute complete, which means executing 2 times. And so we have hello and hello. Now it gets to the turn for the outer loop. So this becomes 1. And as such, when we print I, we'll print out 1. Then this one is going to execute 2 times. It will print hello 2 times. Now it will get to the turn of the outer loop. This time around, the I is equal to 2. And so we print out 2, which is this. And this is going to execute 2 times. That is displaying hello 2 times. And as such, we have hello and hello. So this is how the nested for loop works. Now we're going to modify our multiplication table. Originally in our multiplication table, we can only have a multiplication table for a given value. But using the nested loops, we can generate a range of multiplication tables. So this time around, I'm going to have for I in range 1 to 13. I want to generate multiplication tables, that is 1 times table all the way to 2 times table. So here I'm going to have my colon. Now I'm going to have another for loop. Here I'm going to have for j in range 1 to 13. So assuming I'm doing 2 times multiplication table, I want to do 2 times 1 all the way to 2 times 12. Now to make this program similar to what we had before, I can change this to value. Now here I'm going to have result is equal to, I'm going to be making use of the F string. So I'm going to have F, then a quote. I'm going to provide 3 placeholders. So we'll have these placeholders. Now in this placeholder, I'm going to have value. I'm going to have X. Here I'm going to provide J. Then I'm going to have the equality symbol. And here I'm going to have value multiplied by J. Now I'm going to print out the result. So here we have print result. Now let's run the program. If I run this program, we are able to generate a range of multiplication tables. But if you look at this multiplication table, it is not properly demarcated. It is difficult for you to see the beginning and the end of each multiplication table. To handle this, after the inner loop, I can decide to have something like print. Inside of the print, I'll have a quote. I can just put hyphens. Now let me run the program again. This time around, you can see the ends. Now, if you look at this program again, we have the outer loop. This outer loop produces the value, maybe 1 times table, 2 times table, 3 times table, all the way to 12 times table. Then here we have the inner loop. This inner loop produces the numbers that will multiply the values with maybe 2 times 1, 2 times 2, all the way to 2 times 12. Then after executing this inner loop, this print statement is going to execute. And that is how we came about with this. Now, I can also decide to include headers for our multiplication table. I may want to title each multiplication table. And to do this, I'm going to have a print statement immediately after the outer loop. So I can have something like print. Here I'm going to have multiplication table 4. Then I can provide the value. So I'll have a comma and then have a value. Now let me run the program. And as you can see, we'll have multiplication table for 1. Or better still, we can do 1 times multiplication table. So instead of having this, I can have something like 1. Then I'll put a comma. Here I'm going to have times multiplication table. Now, if I run the program, you can see I have 1 times multiplication tables. Now, I can also decide to put an underline after the title or the header of the multiplication tables. So I can have something like print, or better still, I can copy this print statement and paste it here. Now, if I run the program again, you can see I have 1 times multiplication table. And after that, you see the multiplication table for 1. We'll have, then this is supposed to be a 2 times multiplication table. And if you look at our print statement, we provided 1, which is not the way it's supposed to be. So I'm going to provide value. Now let me run the program. This time around, you can see 1 times multiplication 2 all the way to 12 times multiplication table. So this is how you can generate a range of multiplication tables using the nested for loop.